introduction to this whole experience. I just realized I just clicked the wrong button. Oops. And I need to make sure I'm sharing my audio as well. So one additional time I'll get this right. My bad. So today we're talking about, my design really here was, let's not put up any barriers around what we talk about. Let's try and talk about this holistically, talking about what's going on in the industry and what's going on at Microsoft, and talk from a perspective of there are no boundaries. Let's talk about what's happening in the industry, as well as kind of what we're seeing at Microsoft and what we're seeing at customers. So trying to add some dimension to this. And yeah, I hope you did see that little penguin come in. I think that the thing that I want to kind of help people understand is this is not like an overnight Microsoft's all in on Metaverse. Microsoft has been preparing all of its platforms for 3D support, for 3D objects, for obviously HoloLens has been a project that's been ongoing for a long time. And even the acquisition of AltSpace VR, a lot of people think of that as recent. That was 2017. That's kind of wild to think about. That was 5 years ago. That blows my mind. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Joel Oleson. I'm, as was said, I do a lot in the community, MVP and RD. I am a serious networker. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and Twitter. Essentially, you could say if you're somebody in the industry, I'm happy to connect with you. I'm kind of an Uber connector from that perspective. But as well, my past, I did spend 10 years at Microsoft, 5 years in IT, a couple years in marketing, and then 2-3 years at Slate.com. That was when I was a contractor way back in the early days. And essentially 20 plus years in the Microsoft world. I don't want to say 25, but it probably is more like 25. It's kind of aging me a little bit, but I was the first SharePoint admin at Microsoft, the dedicated admin. Basically, it was Jeff Teeper's team who said, hey, IT, we want you guys to host this in the data center. And I was that full-time hire, essentially, in IT to take what was under his desk and bring it to the data center. And then as well, I got my hands on with the first version of SharePoint Online. It was called BPOS-D, the dedicated managed solution, which we did for Energizer. So I've been involved with the that space for a long time as well. And I just want to call out in my future and the things I want to focus on. I do want to change the world. I've been on this quest to go to every country in the world, and I don't want that just to be a footprint of the carbon of me flying, but I've been trying to get and build a nation that is still in the process of being formed. But I've got a fish pond in Uganda now that is designed to help feed the kids and help get kids go to school. So a lot of fun projects. Happy to chat with you anytime. I do love penguins. I'm the baby penguin man on YouTube. If you just search for baby penguin man, you'll see my video, which has now got over 5 million views. So exciting times. The agenda for today, I want to first kind of talk about what's going on with Metaverse and Web3. And I don't really have a lot of slides there. I just want to acknowledge the fact that in our industry, there's an explosion. There's a ton of momentum. I heard a statistic that Quest 2, those the wireless headset, sold more than Xboxes last year. I mean, I think that's kind of crazy to think about it, but if people are thinking, oh, it's a fad, no. It is here. This is the time. There's a lot going on. Sure, it's a lot behind the scenes, but I'm having real business conversations with folks about what their approach is to a lot of these things. I was even surprised to see how native browsers on mobile devices. You don't even have to install apps now to get 3D support. Essentially, there's built-in components right into Chrome, as an example, and iOS, for that matter. And both Apple and Google are obviously very enmeshed in the industry in this space as well, and supporting all this stuff. It's not just Microsoft. It's not just Meta. There's a lot going on in this space. Ton going on in this space. So I'm obviously going to focus on Microsoft's investment in mixed reality. I want to talk a little about AltVR, AltSpace VR, but you can go to altvr.com. That's actually one anybody here can go and install that. It works on your desktop, works in your headsets, and unbeknownst to a lot of people, that was actually the technology that Avanade was using for their space they set up for their company. So I want to talk a little about that. I want to talk a little about SharePoint spaces, not a lot, but just help you understand some of what's been done, HoloLens and Microsoft Mesh. And really a lot of what I think this session is designed for is to help you prepare for Mesh for Teams and to think about what that will actually do. It's almost like, and I heard this, I can't take credit for this, but I heard this analogy of Microsoft Mesh and Microsoft Teams had a baby, and that baby is Mesh for Teams. All right.
I love that.
Yeah, and I absolutely want this to become a discussion, and I basically, what's realistic? Let's talk about reality, and I want to pass this to you, to Michelle as well. Just talk about where you're at with all this.
Yeah, I mean, as far as is it a hype or is it reality? I think it's been in the making for a very long time. Like you said, over 5 years, and even the thoughts of what to do with it, much, probably years even before that. So, I mean, I know what we're already doing in the HoloLens space, and have been doing in the SharePoint space, as far as integration into SharePoint, being able to hook up your Oculus headset, go into an actual browser into your SharePoint environment, log in, see web parts that are the size of you, which is just incredible and kind of mind-blowing. But now I think there was this missing piece, which is how do we connect people together in a virtual reality space, to be able to interact, maybe whiteboard or brainstorm, not to be alone. And I think that's I think what the ultimate goal would be, is that we can all be together interacting, even if we're worlds apart.
There's so much that hardware-wise that has happened as well in the recent past, that from a performance perspective, all these and a storage perspective, our ability to actually work with 3D content. I don't know if you worked with the early GoPros. It was such a pain just to get those videos off of the device. And now with the 360 cameras, they've made it so much easier to actually get that data off of the device and being able to actually edit it right from your phone. But like 360 cameras are not so unusual even. Like I've got the Live 360 XR2, and when I'm riding my one wheel, capturing this 3D experience, I want to share that 3D experience. I want people to have an immersive experience of being able to see what's it like and feeling that floating experience. But imagine that as well from a customer experience. So I'm going to kick off a little video here. That it's not long. This is a short one. It kind of takes some of the highlights off of the Microsoft announcements from Ignite, and just so we're all on the same page. And let me know that you can't hear the audio. Can you hear the audio?
As the digital and physical worlds come together, we are creating an entirely new platform layer, which is the Metaverse. In a sense, the Metaverse enables us to embed computing into the real world and to embed the real world into computing, bringing real presence to any digital space. What's most important is that we are able to bring our humanity with us and choose how we want to experience this world and who we want to interact with. It's no longer just looking at a camera view of a factory floor. You can be on the floor. It's no longer just video conferencing with colleagues. You can be with them in the same room. Mesh for Microsoft Teams will allow you to connect with presence and have a shared immersive experience directly in Teams.
We've also created an incredible immersive space that's now seamlessly accessible directly through Teams. Why don't we go check it out?
Here we are, Jason, and your avatar looks awesome. Something that I really like is how freely you can move around and have face-to-face conversations.
That's exactly right. We've held more than 100 team gatherings in these immersive spaces where people can connect, learn, and collaborate because they're truly in the same place together.
The solution has been a game changer for onboarding about 100,000 people a year. And like many organizations, onboarding has been remote for the past 18 months. So bringing our new hires into this immersive environment fosters immediate and deeper connections. It transcends physical boundaries and helps individuals experience a culture in a very personal way. Our new hires meet many more people and grow their professional network much faster.
In IT, we're thrilled how easily we could unlock Mesh's capabilities through Teams. The integration with Microsoft 365 makes everything feel familiar. But on top of that, spatial audio makes everything sound just like it would in person. And I love seeing and hearing our colleagues collaborating and whiteboarding and using this space for productivity.
This doesn't just feel real, it is real. It's been exciting to see an idea become a reality in such a short time, enabling presence and connection that transcends location, keeps our culture vibrant wherever we're working, and levels the playing field to create equal and inclusive experiences.
The metaverse is not just transforming how we see the world, it's changing how all of us actively participate in it. And we can't wait to see what you build and how you bring people together with this technology.
All right. Oops. So I think it's interesting to see a video like that and kind of see that vision of what's possible and where's Microsoft going with all this. It's quite incredible to think about it from a technology perspective of what all this can mean. But I wanted to kind of just step back from this and say, well, what is the metaverse? And Gartner, one of our favorite analysts, says enterprise architecture and technology innovator leaders must explore and understand emerging metaverse technology to facilitate adoption and implementation. So Gartner is basically saying you need to explore it, you need to understand it. So I think that's the first thing. So you're saying, well, what is it? Metaverse is a collective virtual open space created by the convergence of virtually enhanced physical and digital reality. It's physically persistent and provides enhanced immersive experiences. And I do like this. Hey, it's kind of a gut check. Gartner expects by 2026, 25% of people will spend at least 1 hour a day in the metaverse for work, shopping, education, social media, and or entertainment. So I think that's quite an interesting one when you start talking about what does it mean and what does it mean for our world, but also what does it mean for work. And I think that this kind of gives us an inkling that, yeah, we should be thinking about this immersive experience and what it can mean. And it's basically a kind of call to action from Gartner of, if you consider yourself a technology innovator, an enterprise architect, you really need to understand what is this emerging metaverse technology. And I think that it's quite fascinating to kind of think about it from that perspective. So in this next section, I want to talk a little about some of the technologies that exist, and then I want to dive into a much more collaborative conversation around some of what's reality and what people are doing. So AltSpace VR, I mentioned that earlier. This is something that it was at the keynote of Build. It was the keynote of Ignite more than once, where it's let's bring people in an immersive experience where we can actually collaborate. Microsoft purchased this back in 2017 with the idea of being able to use that IP for Mesh. And Microsoft Mesh is essentially a development environment. There's an SDK for being able to build these virtual worlds and being able to bring and create digital twins of your environments and creating workspaces using Azure spatial anchors. And I'm sure we could spend an hour on any of those given topics, but just kind of want to highlight that at a high level. With the pandemic, you could say that a lot of this technology took off in a massive way, and a lot of companies with rolling out Teams, there was a lot of this encouragement, hey, go on video, and people were actually feeling meeting fatigue and video fatigue. And this idea of being able to actually create these 3D avatars so that you don't have to worry about your makeup. Your makeup's always good on your avatar. And as well, like you got bedhead or whatever, and you have an early meeting, you don't necessarily feel like going on video, but you know that it's the protocol, it's the proper thing to do. I think that this is one of the more anticipated features of Teams of this year, I believe, is this Mesh for Teams. So kind of top to bottom, here's a number of the Microsoft investments, and I kind of want to just highlight a few of them. HoloLens 2 is the device. That's the kind of latest release, and a lot of the development work that goes into very high-end, very precision type of experiences. HoloLens 2 is a very precise device. It's definitely not a toy, designed around work. AltSpace VR is this space where you can actually create virtual worlds. And the call out, and I'll even bring this up a little later, but the call out here is you want to go and meet people. You want to have a space where you can play games or even just having conversations across space and time. AltSpace VR, we've actually used it for our events, for the virtual marathon, which is happening next week on the 4th to the 6th. It's M365virtualmarathon.com. We've got about 2,000 people registered already. Anyway, quick pitch on that. We ever since we started, this is the 3rd year we've been doing it. We've been running AltSpace VR kind of community spaces, and that's been a great way to meet people from all over the world. And this as well, for this past year, Avanade has actually created, no, I guess it is Accenture. That's why I haven't been able to find it as well. Accenture created this really cool workspace that they've actually branded, and essentially it's part of the new employee experience and onboarding is to get those new employees along with coaches and mentors to get to meet people from the company and help them further in their careers. I think that this is super low-hanging fruit, and it's free, so that's the first thing. But there's even work being done on AltSpace VR to kind of create corporate versions where you don't have to use your Meta account to log into things. So there's work that's being done essentially to be able to integrate directories and security and things like that. But those are a little bit further out roadmap-wise. Azure does have a lot of things going on in the Mesh/Azure space around Azure spatial anchors, the idea of being able to create digital twins. You've got product lines, you want to bring people into the floor, your ability to create lifelike but also precise experiences. There's a lot of work that Microsoft's done in that space. And I think it's important to call out the fact that Microsoft 365 and all of that entire space across SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, ton of work has been done around supporting 3D content, like at a library level, a file level, and even annotation type of experience. Like a lot of that ability to have a couple people go into a space and then be able to talk about it and annotate it. And that was actually even taken further with the Dynamics 365 world with Remote Assist, where essentially you can have somebody put on a HoloLens and join you, do kind of a remote call and have people actually join you virtually in an AR type of experience to be able to, whether it's training or working on a product or a problem or a challenge. There's some fantastic videos that are out there, but there's a lot of real world use cases for remote assist that are actually going on every day, like that released over a year ago. The Microsoft Mesh SDK, talking about building out that development, that released as well about a year ago. A lot of really cool announcements related to Mesh, and I do get excited about Mesh and Teams having a baby, and that baby being Mesh for Teams. Like, I can't get enough. From a date perspective, the only thing we've heard is first half. I was just looking at the calendar. They've still got a month and a half or so before July starts, but I don't know if that's going to be adjusted, but I don't have anything to announce there in terms of availability. When I think about Teams, I think that it's important for us to put Teams in context. This is not just the next version of Skype. Teams is this digital platform, and this quotes from Satya. It's becoming the digital platform as significant as the internet browser or computer operating system. I think the latest numbers we have is 170 million daily active users that are using Teams. And he goes on to say, the captive portal through which you experience everything else. That was the original promise of Windows. We've gone full circle with Teams. I think that's pretty amazing. So what is this Mesh for Teams? Essentially, it's 3D avatars, but beyond 3D avatars, it's also immersive. And you saw a little bit of that in the video. It's essentially, it's not just HoloLens. It actually supports your average VR headsets, HoloLens, iOS, Android, and PC. So essentially, there's some that are more immersive than others, but the idea is you absolutely can join in these immersive spaces that can then resemble physical spaces and creating your own VR. And you could say there's kind of two main things that they've gone after here with this: virtual representation of users and virtual representation of workspaces. And the idea as well is to make this as diverse from a device compatibility perspective as possible as well. Now, leaning in a little bit on this the 3D content experience in SharePoint pages, essentially they full fidelity, you're bringing these SharePoint spaces and pages into Teams. In fact, I don't have time today to demo it, or don't plan to demo it, but I was diving into it just to ensure that spaces work well in Teams, and the answer was yes. In fact, you can even edit your space. You can add your 3D content and videos and images and so on right from Teams once you bring in a SharePoint page. And the page editing experience is getting much, much better this year as well. Another kind of thing to be aware of from a content perspective, Clipchamp, which is one of the new editing tools that's coming out, which is really kind of cool. It's like leaning in on your ability to edit and create 3D clips. So if you got your 3D camera, now there's actually Microsoft tools that you can use to create, edit, share beautiful professional looking videos easily and quickly. So that's kind of cool too. The other one I want to call out from a PowerPoint perspective is this ability that you can actually bring immersive video experiences. And you could kind of say, well, how does that relate to everything? I think that some people, they think of this mixed reality as being a clear cut and dry VR experience or a headset experience. But ultimately, there's a lot more shades of gray here, where this is obviously an AR experience. When I look at it, this is somebody who's actually in another place, and you're actually bringing them into a PowerPoint. How incredible is that? Those are the kinds of things that we can absolutely expect where this mixed reality experience kind of comes together. And as well, and I think this is going to kick off our conversation piece side of this particular session. The elements of the metaverse from Gartner. I think this is a great way to kind of step back from it and say, what is this all about? When you start talking about metaverse, people will bring up digital currency or digital marketplace and NFTs. But the other side of it is you start talking about events and shopping and workplace and the social media aspect of it, the holoportation of digital humans, the gaming aspect of it, the digital independence, where the sky's the limit, digital assets, natural language processing. That you kind of probably even saw that slide that I kind of went quickly over, where you've got people speaking different languages, but being able to see the world in their own language. So it kind of reduces the language barriers even. Really, really powerful when you start talking about what can technology do to our world, kind of to reduce the boundaries. So how do we get started? A key to getting started with the solutions is not to think of AR, VR, MX, MR as a standalone channel, but rather an element in a customer journey. I really like that quote. This idea that you don't have to think about, oh, we got to go create a space. Those spaces, there's the physical world. We can bring the virtual into it, and vice versa. And don't get so stuck on VR or AR. I think a lot of it is like that example with the PowerPoint. Instead of just staring at a PowerPoint screen like you're doing right now, how much better is it if you can actually have the instructor be in the corner? And I didn't really do that on this session, but there's so many videos in this particular PowerPoint. I didn't want to have you have to wait while I'm showing up. You know, sometimes a large PowerPoint is one of the things that makes it go a little bit slower. And I'm going to actually break and stop here for a second. I want to bring Max on to talk about training and learning together. And I also think that it's probably even better to actually let us come on video. So I'm going to stop sharing and let's talk about education in mixed reality, or education in this world we're all talking about here.
It's a really cool and interesting concept. And it's existed far before we've talked about this metaverse thing. To kind of frame it, I'm going to age myself here, or mark myself an age, but I remembered watching Mrs. Frizzle's Magic School Bus cartoon. If anybody remembers that, I know it's a little bit more US, and we got some international audience here, but Mrs. Frizzle would take you into the human body and explore the cells or the solar system, and these students would be immersed in their learning. That's real now. Like, instead of in a science class, you learning about how cells work together and chemical reactions, and actually having to do this in a physical lab, you can literally do it in a metaverse scenario. And yes, seatbelts, everyone. Nate. Yes, exactly. And one of the instructors that I work with, who is more in the astronomy space, said, I have to talk about astronomy in the abstract all the time in my lectures. And what if instead of talking about what the surface of Mars is like, we actually go to the surface of Mars together as a classroom? Like, the insanity of that 10 years ago, it's ridiculous, but it's possible today. And with this more coming, with the baby between mesh and teams, as Joel put it, I like it. We saw a lot of learning shift to teams in the pandemic, and there's a kind of, you all know hybrid work is here to stay. Well, hybrid learning, especially in higher education, is here to stay. We know that computers are going to be used in various atmospheres of the students at home, or whether they have the computer out sitting in their lecture, just right in the lecture hall. Well, you can immerse yourself in those sort of scenarios like that. This isn't just for, if you're in school itself. There are learning opportunities for all of us as adults, as corporate individuals, everything in between. So it's really cool what you're going to be able to do on that side. But then we look at like what Michelle's got in her background there, and Joel showed a few slides of it, of a class mixed between, or a meeting mixed between real people's faces and the faces of some mesh-based avatars. Now, you may look at that and think, that's a little silly looking, but think about that that shy student who doesn't want to show their face, or who's uncomfortable with the way they look, or in situations where a student has to be at home and they're not necessarily comfortable with showing their accommodations in their house behind them. Yeah, we've got background replacement, but really that's only slightly hiding. What if you can express yourself in a different way? It's really incredible, especially at these young ages, how people can self-express.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of, there were some comments in the chat of like, is this real? Like, what value is this going to provide? I'm not calling anybody out specifically, because that's what I thought too. I'm a Microsoft employee. I didn't have early insight into this mesh announcement that we did. Now I have a little bit more, but that was my first reaction to it. So I'm like, oh, come on. Like the avatars, like from The Sims, like the ones I created in those video games, but it's really quite incredible. And it's going to take time for this to come to fruition, especially in the education space. It's going to take creative instructors who are willing to break the bounds of the way they normally teach in their classroom. But
what I think is interesting about that, Max, as well, is I think a lot of us, when you can make yourself look like a dog or a cat or some one of your favorite superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us played with that stuff. Now that obviously in the consumer space, now you start talking about what that means in the business space, of what that can mean from a video fatigue perspective, and being able to be more present, and what you can actually do with that in terms of being able to then project yourself in a work environment, and being able to work with your colleagues, but also being able to reduce the fatigue and not feel like, oh, what's in the room, what's people are gonna complain about the space, and a lot of cool things being done with the audio. But I loved your example too. I remember as a kid buying this or getting this really expensive science book, and in the middle was these plastic pages where they layered the human body. I loved that. You could kind of, here's the reproductive system, and here's the circulatory system, and they kind of layered to create this human, and it was the coolest technology ever. Now you think about what the kids today can do with that. Here's a human body, and let's look at that body, and everybody's standing around the body. Let's look at their circulatory system. Now let's look at their blood system. Now let's watch a doctor do heart surgery. I mean,
and some of this, like, you're making me remember, I actually gave a presentation yesterday to a bunch of Microsoft partners on hybrid learning with mixed reality and augmented reality. And we actually have an app for HoloLens, which is planned to be expanded to just any endpoint through mesh, for dissecting a mouse. Now, sounds silly, but frog. Who remembers dissecting their first frog or whatever it was when you were in elementary or middle school, and how, well, in my opinion, disgusting it was and smelled and all of those sorts of things? You can do that now in a safe environment without having to actually touch anything. Now, there's a value for biologists and for people interested in those areas to actually do things in real life, not minimizing that. But actually, somebody put in the chat during that session yesterday, save the frogs. I mean,
and doesn't it save the frogs by being able to virtually dissect a frog? Absolutely. Yeah. It's probably nothing better for frogs than having it only been done once, and now thousands of kids can dissect frogs without thousands of frogs dying.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing about the education space and mesh, though, that's really important. And Joel, you brought up a good point of like, we've all used Snapchat, and not all of us, but a lot of us have used those filters where I can turn myself into a cat or Captain America or like Iron Man or whatever I want to, and it's fun, right? It's just fun. What place does that have in the business world, enterprise world, and education world? Is something that Microsoft is really, really being quite careful about. We want to add value to meetings, not cause distraction, especially in the team space. And so I can't ever promise anything, but especially in the education space, I don't think you're going to see the ability for students to turn themselves into a cat, because that's more of a distraction in the classroom.
Right.
That goes against the goals we're having here.
But I imagine a creative class, an art class, where you're building your own avatar. You know, a lot of us saw probably that metaverse example that Mark Zuckerberg was saying, where, you know, that environment, you've got somebody showing up as a robot, and if that lowers the boundary for people and allows them to be more social, I think that people are going to start stretching the boundaries of what is work and what are the rules. You're going to have some places where, okay, you're an insurance company, no cats allowed, but there may be other designer type environments where it's, you know, express yourself.
Right.
We embrace diversity. We embrace accessibility. The person who's in a wheelchair no longer has to be in a wheelchair. You know what I mean? I think it's great that people can express themselves and be who they are. And there's an appropriate time for that. And there's probably different policies in different companies to be able to support that kind of thing.
I would certainly see it as a, you know, a couple different personas of myself. I would want to have more of a relaxed persona and then a professional persona. I think that there is a need for both out there, and bringing that into work, I think, is a really interesting concept, because now we're talking about what we've been doing throughout COVID is be authentic, be inclusive, come on camera. Well, now we're tired, and how can we still maintain the same way to connect but be who we are? And I love the idea. The first thought that you mentioned, Joel, is women or men don't need to wear makeup every day if they don't want to get ready, you know,
Right.
and that's what they're comfortable with. And I think that also just being who you are, the accessibility of it, making sure that you get those experiences to build who you really are and put that out there. And I think there is a lot in terms of adding in those types of diversity, those types of accessibility pieces to your avatar. I think that's got to be a part of this. It has to be a part of the story to say, you know what, I'm an amputee. You know what, I'm in a wheelchair. Like, represent me, represent all the colors of all the humans out there. So I think it's important that as we go into it, especially into business, it has to be inclusive of all those capabilities.
So you guys have heard of the reality show Undercover Boss, where
Yes.
here's the CEO. He only usually exists in the ivory tower. He never goes to the floor. And so it's this funny show of take the executive and put him on the front lines. You know, it's McDonald's, and now you've got the executive working the front register, or it's, you know, a plumbing company, and they're there with the customers and watching somebody doing and getting dirty, the dirty jobs kind of thing. Well, think about what this enables from a new employee experience, a training experience in any industry. I think that's the thing, is like, oh yeah, that's great for education, or that's great for medical. No, stop for a second. Wouldn't it be great to have a place, a space that represents your work environment, where new employees can come and see your products and see how work is done, whether it's instructive 3D videos that are immersive, your product lines, and being able to see them in the 3D space. I absolutely would give you a call to action, two of them. One of them is go out to Altspace VR, get comfortable with it. If you're in IT, you absolutely need to go and experience this kind of thing. And AltSpace VR is already a Microsoft Metaverse that's out there, and you can join the beta and create your own world. Now, create a world and then go invite some colleagues and spend some time, maybe some colleagues you've never met. They're in Europe, you're in the US, or they're in Asia. Create one of those things and actually have a real meeting in a virtual space so that you understand what this is all about. So then when Mesh for Teams comes, you're an expert and you can actually bring that expertise. You talk about, this is a practical session here. This is not, oh, 10 years off in the future. No, no, no. You can do this today. Go into AltSpace VR, create a branded company experience today where you can invite your colleagues from around the world to join you for a meeting. Have a 3D meeting, and they can join from their desktop. They don't even need a headset. It can be as immersive as you want it to be. So that's call to action number one. Action number two is go find out, is there any 3D content in your company? You might have to go deep and find it in engineering, or you may have to find it in some product line somewhere deep. But call to action, you need to find out where inside your organization that kind of content lives, and give them a proposal. Hey, we'd love to be able to create a space, like a SharePoint space. That stuff's all released, it's RTM, but have a library where you've got your company 3D resources that can be engineering stuff, but they can be released. Take the last version, but create a space where you can display and have an immersive world where you've got your 3D videos, your 3D content for your company. And if that doesn't exist, go create it. So those are the two call to actions from me for this session. So you're ready. That way you're ready. This is no longer, oh, 10 years in the future. No, no, no. You're in this world and you're an expert because you've actually experienced this stuff. You're further ahead than 99% of all your colleagues. And I want people to invite anybody now that has anything to add to this conversation. Just raise your hand. Let's use that virtual capability. Raise your hand and we'll have some people join us. Love to hear your experiences and what you're thinking about all this powerful new tech that's very much about imagination and discovery. And we can keep chatting while we're waiting for hands to go up.
Yeah, we could probably start with a question. I know Kevin is asking, is this one of those things where we should go make a space just to claim the name for your company before someone else does? So you want to take that? I'm happy to.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So think of AltSpace VR. That's for consumer right now, right? It's not a commercial product that's inside of or secured inside of your Azure Active Directory, right? But it's a playground that's publicly available to you to create an account. And granted, they're going to be consumer accounts, but it will get you the jump start that you need to really be immersed in the experience and kind of get comfortable with moving around throughout your world.
Yep. And I'll let you keep monitoring the questions and the hands. I'm going to just show something in the background while you're doing that.
Okay.
I do like that comment about, and I did see this one in relation to storage. So there's a couple things I wanted to show. This is AltSpace VR. I'm sorry, no, this is SharePoint Spaces. So I'm looking at a space. This is one I just created this morning. And this is in my Microsoft 365. So this is online. You can notice there's the headset button down here. If I click edit, I can add something to my space. So I'm in the space design now, and I'm not a tenant admin. You don't need any special rights. This is just like you're the site collection admin for this Microsoft 365 group. And yeah, on here, notice this is why I say go collect those resources. You can add 3D images through a 360 image. How about the floor? Go take a 360 image of your facility, your lobby, your, whatever that is. And there are apps even for your phone to be able to take 360 images, or even just doing a panorama and then uploading that. Like, this is not rocket science to be able to pull in some really cool stuff. You can build 360 tours, bring in 360 videos, those 3D objects. Like I was saying, what are your products? You know, if your product is schools and classrooms, you could do a classroom tour of a 360. If it's a hospital, you could do your, here's what these rooms look like. You're making an immersive experience right in here. Anyway,
I think of campus tours, or I think of, I want to tour a location that I've never been to, maybe before I physically go. Like, there just really are pretty endless, to have those experiences and building them either, you know, without space, but in SharePoint. Just getting back to your question around storage, it's a SharePoint page. So, you know, it's just a new type of page that you see lit up when you enable spaces.
Exactly. And there's plenty of stuff if you're looking to build a prototype or a proof of concept or something like that. You can build very easily right out of the content that is right in here to be able to create these spaces. I'm just gonna, you know, there's so many things you could do to show off the tech. I just want to show this one thing just to kind of help you understand that all this stuff's RTM in terms of what you're seeing right here. And imagine this with your own products and experiences. So we save it. And understand that I'm actually running this on my little laptop. So we republish it. So we now have a 3D space where we're looking at 3D objects, and we're in SharePoint. And now guess what? I'm going to go jump into Teams.
And I love what you said, Steve, around you love the potential of the tech, but you worry, and I get it. I think every generation of an advent of new technology went, and that population went through that same worry. Like, are they going to be respectful? Are they going to try to, you know, have some sort of nefarious actions leading to that? I think we're always going to experience it. I think it's just really important to know this is the next wave that at least the younger generation is growing up with. I think the expectation for the talent pool for many of these companies out there that should be looking at this is that might be a new expectation for your Gen Z. So I think tread cautiously, but know that it's coming.
Exactly. And while that's rendering for the first time, I'm going to jump to a slide that speaks to, hey, what about the storage? Should I be concerned about this? Microsoft behind the scenes has actually been working a lot on storage. Microsoft 365 has been growing by 100 petabytes a month, storage-wise. They've been working on the upload speeds, the download speeds, more localizing it, or at least having it locale-based, so that it is as fast as it can be. You've got the Azure front doors and all sorts of interesting optimizing technology that's going on here to kind of power this technology. But I think the question about what about storage? Guess what? Microsoft Stream is now pushing all those videos into SharePoint as well. So I think that from a storage perspective, you can absolutely kind of expect that it already supports videos. It already supports super large files. I'm not saying you have to create a ton of large content, but from a SharePoint perspective or SharePoint Online perspective, it absolutely supports it and is designed to handle that large content. And I don't know if that fully addresses your question or your concern, but I think that you could definitely expect that these services are going to grow, and the ability to edit large 3D videos and things like that, the technology is actually catching up and is supporting these larger file types to be able to, hey, I want to add some annotation to a super large file. that's the kind of, it's only incremental changes. So it's super cool in terms of the differencing and the technology to be able to support that kind of technology. And see if our little anyway, I did this morning. It's not that hard, but it does render in Teams as well. In fact, I could probably show you here. Check this out. So if you're wondering, how do I add a space to Teams? Just add a SharePoint page. And you noticed I grabbed the URL of that particular space. There we go. And add a page from any SharePoint site. Here we go. And that's probably because of my issue. So anyway, I just want to say this does work. my failing right here is probably not the anyway, you can pull that page, that SharePoint space right into Teams. Obviously you'd want it to be the same team, which I'm not on the right team, but you get it. So you basically can render that space right in your team, add it as a tab in your channel, as an example.
Yeah, I can actually share that if you'd like.
Sure. And I know I'm out of time, but I want to just thank everybody who attended and the great dialogue we had here. Thanks a lot for Max and Michelle for hosting me, and good stuff. I think there's so much that is going on in this world. Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
nice
so
little
this
3D
is
space.
Yeah, this is great because once you do bring in that SharePoint page, you can add it as a tab in Teams. But even more than that, you can start having conversations. So if you wanted to have a conversation as you're going through here, and you can maybe click on your meeting and it will open up a Teams meeting. You could watch a video. You can see how you could bring in that kind of onboarding experience. You could, have your sales conference, have your different events throughout the Spaces experience, have things automatically add things to your calendar. It really is a great way to be able to have that experience that's immersive. And if you notice on the right-hand side, you've got headset. So I could actually grab my Oculus headset and go into Teams, into the SharePoint space experience, and then have conversations. So if I wanted to have a conversation about this, I could certainly now having a dialogue while I'm immersed in the 3D. I think it's just it's going to change things.
I think that I work for a video game company. I work for PlayStation, and the idea that now the developers can jump into the immersive experience and actually do annotation on, they're getting their designs, or they're getting optimizing an old game or whatever. People being able to jump in and being able to annotate something and say, hey, it needs to be change the shading here or there, and being able to do arrows and design kind of in this experience, in this immersive experience. Like it's really quite cool. I did a virtual event with a space as well. Like the lobby of the event is this, so that you can see all the different tracks, and had kind of a little avatar with clicking here, or kind of having a portal-like experience where it's almost like you're jumping through the portal to then go into, then have the Teams meeting open up.
Yeah, and I haven't opened up this experience. I think it's at least 6 months. So it's just taken a second to load. But as you can see, you can think of your products that you build. Now you can bring in those 360-degree images and have a way, as people are onboarding, really be immersed in what that experience is without having to go visit a location. That's just one experience.
That's great.
All right, I'll pass it over. And thanks, Joel. Is there anything else that you'd like to finish on?
I just want to invite people to don't be afraid. Like there's already so much released technology, especially in the Microsoft space around this, that it really takes a creative mind to be able to do this. And when you start talking about a lot of people are working from home, haven't seen people in a long time, maybe kind of shy to pull things together and even travel. It's a really good opportunity, I think, to start thinking about how can we create immersive spaces to be able to get people closer to what's going on the floor or what's going on in the buildings, so they're more comfortable and familiar with these experiences.
All right, well, thank you, Joel. Thanks, Max, for also participating. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and hope everybody enjoys the rest of the event. Sessions are starting in about a minute, so head on over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
I'm going to put my LinkedIn in the chat. For anybody who has any follow-up questions or wants to ask me just one-on-one, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.